I once found a wallet with a bunch of money. I didn't give it back. I spent it all. A month later, I was robbed of almost the same amount. Then I realized that karma exists and it caught up with me. And you know what? I don't even feel sorry for it. Because that money was the best weekend of my life. I once did something that I still can't decide was the luckiest accident of my life. Or the moment I doomed myself to eternal bad karma. It happened on a random Tuesday. Nothing special, just one of those ordinary days where you expect absolutely nothing interesting to happen. I had just finished a long and boring shift at my part-time job, dragging myself home through the usual crowded streets. I remember being exhausted, sweaty, and in a pretty sour mood because I had checked my bank account earlier that day and realized I had about $30 to my name until the next paycheck. You know that sinking feeling when you mentally calculate how many instant noodles you'll need to survive the week? Yeah, that was me. And then, out of nowhere, I saw it. A wallet. Just sitting there, half tucked under the bench at the bus stop, like someone had dropped it without even noticing. I glanced around immediately, because, of course, my first thought was that it had to be a setup. Like maybe someone left it there as a test, or worse, some hidden camera prank show. But nope. The people at the bus stop were too busy staring at their phones, scrolling endlessly. Nobody else even noticed it. I picked it up. My heart was beating so fast you'd think I had just stolen a diamond necklace or something. It was a normal black leather wallet, a little scratched at the edges but still solid. I opened it and my jaw almost hit the ground. Cash. Stacks of it. I don't mean just a couple of bills folded together. I mean thick, fresh, crinkly notes. More money than I had ever seen in my hands at one time. Later I counted it, and it was just under $2,000. $2,000. For me, at that moment, it felt like I was holding the key to every single problem in my life. Rent, food, fun, everything could be covered. But here's where the real dilemma kicked in. I also found the guy's ID inside. Driver's license, membership cards, even some business cards neatly tucked in. The guy had a name, an address, a face smiling awkwardly in a badly lit photo. And suddenly, it wasn't just free money from the universe. It was his money. I stood there with the wallet in my hand, sweating bullets. Part of me was screaming, "Do the right thing! Return it!" Imagine if it were you who lost that much cash. You'd be devastated. But the other part of me, the hungry, broke, desperate part of me, whispered, "When will you ever get another chance like this? Nobody saw you. Nobody knows. This could change your whole month." Guess which voice I listened to? I walked straight home, clutching that wallet so tightly my fingers hurt. I half expected the owner to suddenly appear out of nowhere, running toward me, yelling for his lost wallet back. I even kept checking over my shoulder, convinced someone had seen me take it and was following me. But nope. The universe stayed silent. When I finally locked my apartment door behind me, I dumped the cash onto my bed and just stared at it. I felt like some kind of villain in a movie, counting money with greedy eyes. And yet, at the same time, I felt this insane rush. Like I had just gotten away with something impossible. I laughed out loud, then immediately felt guilty, then laughed again. It was a roller coaster of emotions. Here's where things got wild. I didn't save the money. I didn't pay off rent early, or stock up responsibly on groceries, or put it aside like a mature adult would. Nope. I blew it. Every single dollar. That very night, I called up 2 of my friends and told them we were going on the most ridiculous, no-limits weekend trip ever. I didn't explain where the money came from. I just said I'd gotten a bonus at work. We booked a last-minute Airbnb in a fancy city we could never normally afford to visit. We ate at restaurants with tablecloths and waiters who refilled your water glass every 2 minutes. We bought overpriced cocktails with ridiculous names. We even rented a stupid little boat one afternoon just because we could. And for those few days, I felt like a completely different person. Like I wasn't the broke, struggling version of me who had to check my bank account before even buying coffee. I felt rich, free, untouchable. But deep down I knew that money wasn't mine. I knew that some poor guy out there was probably panicking, retracing his steps, maybe tearing apart his house looking for that wallet. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that eventually karma was going to come for me. And oh, it did. Harder than I could have imagined. But that's a story for the next part. So, here's my confession. I found a wallet stuffed with cash. I didn't return it. I spent every single dollar living out a fantasy life for one weekend. And even though I know I should feel terrible, part of me doesn't regret it at all. Would you have kept the money? Or would you have given it back? I woke up Monday morning feeling like a king. My bank account was still technically zero, but that didn't matter. I had just lived a weekend so surreal it felt like a movie, and in those few days, the world had bent to my whims. But reality has a way of crashing in when you least expect it. The first hint that things might be unraveling came when I checked my phone. I had ignored all notifications over the weekend, because, honestly, who wants to check emails or texts when you're busy floating on a rented boat in the middle of a lake with overpriced champagne? But now, staring at the screen, I realized I had a flood of missed calls and texts. And not from my friends. No, these were from a number I didn't recognize. The texts were simple, almost innocent sounding at first. Have you seen a black leather wallet? Lost wallet, please call if found. ID inside. Very important. My stomach dropped. My first instinct was to laugh nervously. Of course he's looking for it. Who wouldn't? But then reality sank in. He probably had already retraced his steps a dozen times, felt that gut-wrenching panic when he realized $2,000 had vanished from his life, and now he was sending out desperate messages. I sat on my bed, wallet still hidden under a pile of clothes, and felt a cold sweat creeping down my back. It would have been the perfect moment to turn myself in. Just slip into the shadows of responsibility, return the wallet, and hope the universe forgives me. But here's the thing. I couldn't. The thought of those $2,000, already gone from my life in a haze of cocktails, overpriced hotel rooms, and impulsive purchases, made me both laugh and cringe. It was too late to fix anything. And somewhere deep down, I was terrified to face the consequences. The next few days were a mess. I started noticing little things that made me paranoid. Every time I left my apartment, I imagined someone lurking outside, waiting for me. I kept checking behind bushes, under cars, even inside the mailbox. I hadn't actually done anything illegal in the serious sense, but my mind treated it like I had just stolen $1 million painting. Then came work. I walked into my shift like a zombie, every smile forced, every movement mechanical. I kept imagining my boss, or worse, some random stranger who had somehow tracked me down, bursting through the door, yelling, pointing at me, and demanding restitution. Every beep of the cash register sounded like a countdown to my downfall. And yet, life was still moving. Bills needed to be paid, people still talked to me, and nobody had the slightest idea what I'd done. I couldn't help but feel like I was living in some weird, suspended bubble. A bubble where I was rich, reckless, and completely untouchable. At least for a little while. Then it happened. I was walking home one evening, exhausted from work, head down, earbuds blasting my favorite playlist to drown out the world, when I felt it. A sharp tug at my backpack. My heart jumped straight into my throat. I whipped around, and for a split second, I saw nothing. Then, in a blur, a hand grabbed my bag and ran. I barely had time to react. My backpack, the one that contained my laptop, my books, and the few personal items I still had, was gone. Just like that. I stood there, stunned, staring at the empty space where my bag had been. My mind refused to process it. No, this can't be happening. Not to me. Not now. And then it hit me. Maybe it wasn't random. Maybe this was karma. Maybe the universe had finally decided to collect its debt for my weekend of reckless joy. I ran after the thief, but of course, he was faster, smarter, and already disappeared into the maze of streets. I could barely even remember what had been in the backpack in my panic, but I knew it was more than just stuff. It was a symbol of control, of the illusion that I was untouchable. And now it was gone. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my bed, staring at the wall, replaying every decision I'd made in the last week. Every cocktail, every ridiculous Airbnb, every impulsive purchase. All led to this moment. All led to me standing there, shaken and empty-handed. I couldn't stop thinking about the wallet, the money, the thrill, and the inevitable fall. The next morning, I got a call from my friend who had gone on that weekend trip with me. He sounded nervous. "Dude, did you see the news?" I laughed nervously, thinking he was joking. But then he started describing a local story. A man reported losing a wallet with a significant amount of cash over the weekend. The police had been involved. Apparently, the story made a little local buzz because of the amount. And then he added, almost casually, "They don't know who took it." I swallowed hard. My pulse was racing. I couldn't believe it. Nobody knew. Not the cops, not the wallet's owner. Nobody had a clue that I had been the one holding that money, spending it, and living like a king while the guy panicked. And here's the cruel, almost ironic twist. The next day, I got my stolen backpack back. Some kid had tried to sell it near the corner store, and the cops had tracked it down. Everything was still there, nothing missing. It felt like the universe had sent me a message. A warning. You got away with it once, it seemed to say. But don't push your luck. Since then, I've lived with this strange cocktail of guilt, thrill, and respect for fate. I still think about that weekend sometimes. I still laugh when I remember the absurdity of it all, and I still cringe at how reckless I was. And the craziest part? Nobody, not a single person, has any idea about the full story. So here I am, confessing anonymously, because sometimes it feels like the only safe way to admit your mistakes and laugh at them at the same time. I dodged karma in some ways, got hit by it in others, and learned a lesson that's impossible to ignore. Life has a funny sense of balance, and you never know when it's going to slap you upside the head. So, tell me, would you have spent the money? Or would you have returned it immediately? And if you did spend it, would you have had the same weekend I did, living a fantasy while knowing you might be caught at any second? After the backpack incident, I tried to convince myself I had learned my lesson. I told myself I would never touch someone else's money again, that I would live cautiously, pay my bills, and maybe, just maybe, avoid making the same reckless mistake twice. But life, as it often does, has a funny way of testing you when you least expect it. Started with small things at first. I'd get little reminders of that weekend in the most random ways. A friend mentioning how expensive a hotel was, a song playing in a cafe that reminded me of the boat ride, or even a commercial showing a stack of cash on the screen. Each time, my heart would race and a little voice in my head would whisper, "You know what you could have done differently." And then came the email. I was sitting at work, doing the usual monotonous tasks, staring at a spreadsheet I didn't care about, when a new email popped up. The subject line read, "Lost Wallet Inquiry." My stomach dropped instantly. I hesitated for a few seconds. Okay, more like a minute, staring at the screen. It was from an email address I didn't recognize, and the message was formal, almost clinical. "Hello, we are contacting you regarding a wallet reported lost last week containing a significant amount of cash. Please contact us if you have any information that could assist in the recovery." I froze. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to delete it immediately, pretend it never existed, and hope the universe would keep its silence. But another part of me, dumb, reckless, curious, clicked it open. The message continued. "We are aware that the wallet may have been found by an unknown party. Any information will remain confidential, but it is imperative that we recover the funds. Thank you for your cooperation." I felt like the world had just tilted sideways. The email didn't accuse me of anything. It didn't even ask me to return the money yet. But it was enough to send my mind spiraling. I spent the rest of the day in a paranoid haze, imagining detectives at every corner, neighbors peeking through windows, and my friends secretly judging me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about what I had done, what I could do, and how far I could push my luck. My mind replayed every decision of that fateful weekend. The thrill of spending money I didn't earn, the absurdity of renting a boat just to float around a lake, the laughter, the guilt, the paranoia. And then it hit me. Maybe the universe wasn't done with me yet. Maybe karma wasn't a single event. It was a long, creeping shadow, watching, waiting, planning. I tried to distract myself. I binge-watched shows, played video games, and even went out with friends, but nothing worked. Every laugh felt hollow, every smile forced, and every conversation seemed to carry the weight of a secret I couldn't share. I was living in a strange limbo, suspended between thrill and terror, excitement and dread. Then came Friday. I had decided to meet one of my friends at a cafe after work. Nothing special, just a casual catch-up. But when I walked in, I immediately sensed something was off. There was a man sitting at a corner table, looking at his phone, but occasionally glancing up, scanning the room. He wasn't wearing anything particularly distinctive, but there was an intensity in his gaze that made me freeze. I ordered my coffee slowly, trying not to make eye contact, my heart hammering in my chest. As I sat down with my friend, I noticed the man had started taking notes on a small pad. He wasn't overtly aggressive, just quietly meticulous. And then it clicked. He was watching me. Not randomly, not by coincidence. He was here for me. I excused myself to the bathroom, pretending to make a call, and my mind raced through every possible scenario. What if he confronted me? What if he already knew? What if this was the beginning of a chain of events that would ruin my life? And then I laughed. Bitterly, nervously, because of course, this was exactly the type of absurd situation I had created for myself. When I returned to the table, my friend hadn't noticed the man. I considered saying something, maybe joking about it, but my voice caught in my throat. I was too scared, too embarrassed, too paranoid. I kept glancing over my shoulder, feeling like every moment stretched into eternity. Then it happened. The man got up and walked straight toward me. My heart froze. I didn't know what to do. Run, hide, lie, confess? He stopped a few feet away and looked down at me. And in the most anticlimactic twist possible, he smiled awkwardly and said, "Hey, do you know where I could find a good coffee around here?" I blinked. My pulse slowly returned to normal. I stared at him, realizing I had been imagining the entire confrontation, projecting my guilt onto a complete stranger. I laughed nervously, embarrassed, and mumbled a direction. My friend looked at me like I had suddenly grown a second head. It was a humbling, almost ridiculous reminder of how deeply paranoia can take hold when you carry a secret that weighs more than it should. And yet, in that ridiculous, ironic way, it also made me realize how thin the line had been between thrill and disaster. But the universe wasn't done with me yet. Because that weekend, the story I had tried to keep buried came back in a way I could never have predicted. A friend of a friend, someone who had somehow learned about the wallet, mentioned it casually at a party. Someone joked, "Imagine finding $2,000 on the street and not returning it." And my blood ran cold. My secret was no longer just mine. Even in the most subtle, offhand way, someone had started putting pieces together. At that moment, I realized that no matter how careful you are, no matter how clever, no matter how fast you spend or hide, the truth has a way of creeping back in. Karma isn't always instant. Sometimes, it's slow, patient, and relentless. And sometimes, it shows up when you least expect it, in the most absurdly ironic ways imaginable. So here I am, still carrying this secret, still haunted by a weekend of reckless fun and the shadow of consequences I dodged and still might face. I don't know if I'll ever truly be free of it. I don't know if the owner will ever find out, or if the email trail I received was just a warning from the universe. But I do know one thing. The thrill, the fear, the sheer absurdity of it all. It changed me. And now I wonder, if you found a wallet with thousands of dollars, would you spend it recklessly? Would you hide it, just like I did? Or would you return it immediately, knowing the universe has a long memory and karma has a way of catching up? It all hit me one Thursday evening. I had been trying, mostly in vain, to distract myself from the creeping guilt, the paranoia, the little reminders of that weekend I had spent living like some reckless billionaire. Work, friends, Netflix, video games. It was all a thin veil over the fact that I had done something I could never truly undo. But I thought I was careful. I thought I had slipped through the cracks. I thought karma, if it existed, had somehow let me off the hook. I was wrong. I was walking home from a late shift, the streets quiet and misty after a light rain. I had my headphones in, music blaring, trying to convince myself that the world had no interest in punishing me tonight. I turned a corner and there he was, the man from the lost wallet. Or at least, Someone who looked just like him. My stomach sank so fast I felt like it had fallen through the soles of my shoes. He was standing there, in the shadow of a street lamp, holding something that glinted under the dim light. A wallet. Could it be? My brain was screaming. Run! Hide! Don't even breathe! But my legs froze in place. I wasn't prepared for what came next. He looked right at me. His eyes, calm, deliberate, and somehow piercing, locked onto mine. And then he smiled. Not the friendly, casual smile you give a stranger on the street. No, this was a knowing, almost mocking smile. And then he said 3 words that would haunt me forever. I know everything. Time stopped. Every sound from the street, the distant hum of traffic, the dripping of water from rooftops, even the low rumble of my own heartbeat, faded into silence. I tried to speak, tried to form a sentence, but nothing came out. My throat felt like it was stuffed with cotton. He took a step closer. I know about the wallet. The money. The weekend. Don't even try to deny it. I blinked, hoping somehow this was a joke, a test, some cruel trick. But the intensity in his eyes told me it wasn't. He knew. Every detail, every indulgent, reckless decision I had made. $2,000, gone in a whirlwind of ridiculous fun, and now facing me like a storm I couldn't escape. I tried to laugh nervously. Okay, look, I think you have the wrong guy. He shook his head. Nope. Not wrong. And you have no idea what you've started. I swallowed hard. Panic surged through me in a way I had never experienced before. My chest tightened, my hands trembled, and a cold sweat ran down my back. I realized I wasn't just dealing with guilt anymore. I was dealing with the consequences. Actual consequences. Then, in a motion so quick I barely saw it, he pulled out a phone and started scrolling through something. My heart raced, and for a brief moment, I thought he was calling the police. But no, he wasn't. He was showing me pictures. Photos of the weekend. Photos of me at the Airbnb, at restaurants, with my friends. Every ridiculous, impulsive moment captured. He had found evidence. Concrete, undeniable evidence of my reckless spending spree. And then the worst part hit me. He wasn't angry. Not really. He was entertained. A mix of amusement and disappointment flickered across his face. You really are something else, he said. I've been trying to track this down for days. Thought I'd catch a thief, but you just couldn't help yourself, could you? I laughed nervously, trying to deflect. It was a mistake. I didn't mean. He cut me off. Don't bother. I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to make sure you understand the lesson. Lesson. What lesson could there possibly be at this point? $2,000 gone, paranoia creeping into every waking thought, and now this man standing in the rain, calmly recounting every step I had taken. And then it happened. The climax of everything I had feared. He opened his wallet. And inside were bills. Not a few hundred, not a small stack. An amount that matched exactly what I had spent. $2,000, crisp and untouched. You see, he said, handing it to me, money has a way of coming back around. You had your fun. But don't forget this. The universe notices. You can run, you can hide, but you can't escape entirely. My hands shook as I took the wallet. I didn't know whether to feel relief, shame, or sheer terror. I was speechless, rooted to the spot as he disappeared into the misty streets like some mythological figure delivering a warning I would never forget. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't brag, didn't post about it, didn't even mention it to my friends. I kept the experience locked inside me, a secret too bizarre to share. But the lesson lingered. The memory of that man, the photos, the warning. It followed me like a shadow. I still think about it. Every time I hear someone talk about karma or universal justice, my chest tightens. Because I know firsthand that it isn't just a concept. It's alive. It's patient. It's relentless. And sometimes, it shows up in the rain, with a smile that chills your blood and a wallet that reminds you of everything you did wrong. So here's the confession. I found a wallet. I spent the money recklessly. I thought I got away with it. And then karma, in the most shocking, terrifyingly perfect way, came back to remind me that nothing truly disappears. I walked away with the money returned, my ego bruised, and my respect for the universe slightly terrified. Now I wonder, if you found that kind of money, if you had a weekend to spend like a king, would you have done the same thing? Would you have risked it all for a few days of reckless joy? Or would you have returned it immediately, knowing that karma has its own strange sense of timing, and its own way of catching up? Since that night, I've lived with a kind of quiet awareness I never had before. I go through life differently now. Cautious, maybe a little paranoid, but also strangely exhilarated by the memory of what happened. It's like I was handed a ticket to experience a version of life I could never have imagined, and then the universe pulled me back, reminding me that every action carries weight, no matter how small or reckless it seems. The money, of course, was returned. I still have the wallet. I keep it tucked away somewhere I don't even look at too often, because staring at it too long brings back too many memories. Memories of laughter, panic, thrill, and sheer, unfiltered fear. I remember the moment I first realized what I had done, spending thousands that weren't mine, living a fantasy, knowing someone was frantic, and yet, feeling no shame, just joy. I also remember the moment when that joy turned to terror, the instant the universe, in the form of that calm, mysterious man, reminded me that there is always a reckoning. Since then, I've thought a lot about human nature. About temptation, about greed, about the thrill of getting away with something forbidden. And I've wondered constantly if I'm different from other people, or if I'm just like everyone else, facing the same urges, the same temptations, the same decisions. Because when the wallet landed in my hands, the choice wasn't obvious. Nobody is a saint in those moments. Some people would have returned it immediately. Some people would have walked away, empty-handed, with nothing but a pang of guilt. Some people, like me, would have gone full throttle, reckless, ignoring the voice inside that whispered warnings. And the truth, I don't regret it. Not entirely. I regret the anxiety, the fear, the sleepless nights, the paranoia, the moments when I was sure the world had turned against me. But I don't regret the exhilaration. I don't regret the absurd, unrestrained joy of that weekend. Because, in a way, that experience revealed something I didn't know about myself. That I can feel alive, even in a moment of complete irresponsibility, even when I know I'm walking the razor's edge of consequences. It's a dark, twisted kind of self-awareness, but it's honest. Life has continued. People around me have no idea what happened. Friends, family, co-workers, they talk about money, plans, weekends, and all the trivial things that seem normal, but none of them know the secret. I've never told a soul. And part of me hopes I never will. There's a thrill in keeping it to myself, a bizarre kind of satisfaction in knowing that I held that experience entirely in my hands, lived it, and then survived it. Sometimes I imagine telling someone, just to see the reaction, to hear them gasp, to see their eyebrows shoot up. But I never do. Because the story feels too surreal, too personal, and too dangerous in its own way. Once it's spoken aloud, it loses its magic, or maybe its power. And I'm not ready for that. I want to carry it silently, like a secret badge of both shame and pride. Even now, months later, I replay that weekend in my mind. I imagine every little detail, the clinking of glasses at the fancy restaurants, the ridiculous boat ride on a lake I could never afford to rent, the bursts of laughter that came with knowing I was living outside the rules for a brief, impossible moment. And I remember the fear, the sharp, suffocating terror when that man appeared, when I realized the universe was not only watching but had orchestrated its own reminder. It's strange how a single event can alter your perception of life. I see opportunities differently, risks differently, even small ethical dilemmas feel heavier. I've grown, yes, but in a way that's complicated, messy, and uniquely mine. And sometimes, late at night, I lie awake and wonder, if I had done nothing, if I had returned the wallet immediately, would I be the same person? Would my life feel as vivid, as chaotic, as terrifyingly exhilarating? I've also learned something about karma. It isn't always instant. It doesn't always arrive in the way you expect. Sometimes, it's subtle, slow, creeping, appearing in ways that are almost impossible to anticipate. A phone call. A stranger's glance. A letter, an email, a coincidence that makes your stomach drop. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's a man in the rain handing you the reminder that every action carries weight. That weekend was my lesson, my test, and my awakening. And now, I live with it quietly. I work, I laugh, I enjoy life, but always with a part of me aware that the universe is watching. That thrill of secrecy, of risk, of the impossible weekend, lingers, both a blessing and a curse. I've become more cautious, more reflective, and yet, in some strange way, more alive. That's the paradox. Freedom wrapped in guilt, joy tangled with fear, exhilaration intertwined with accountability. So, here's my confession, the last one I'll share. I found a wallet full of cash. I spent every dollar recklessly. I thought I had escaped consequences, only to realize that karma has a way of finding you, of reminding you, of teaching you lessons you can never forget. I survived, I learned, and I carry the story alone, a secret that shapes me every day. Now it's your turn to think about it. If you found a wallet with thousands of dollars, would you spend it like I did, knowing the risks? Or would you return it immediately, hoping the universe would be merciful? And if you spent it, would you have the courage, or the paranoia, to survive the consequences?